The number one comment we hear at the shop, by a landslide, why don't they make stereos like they used to? The new stereos today are just absolute garbage. I've heard that so many times. More than these old receivers actually have value? That'd be number two. And my response to this question has changed over the years. It's gone from, you're absolutely right, the new stereos do suck. And then for a while it was, well, actually they do. They're just really expensive. And today, I'm changing it again. So let's look at what's changed since the glory days of hi-fi, when stereos were overbuilt, underpriced, and affordable. And why are most people that come through our door completely unaware that they are making really good stereos in 2025? And they're the same price they were 50 years ago. So the golden era for me is definitely the 1970s. I think as far as consumer stereo equipment goes, this is the golden era. They're selling an absolute ton of these overbuilt, great value stereos. If you think about a first-time home buyer or a family just getting started, moving into a house, and what devices they need from their entertainment budget for this new house, it's pretty small. I'm old enough to remember the late 70s, we had a TV with 3 stations. We had a piano. Seems mind-blowing now. When was the last time you walked into somebody's house and saw a piano? And then you had a stereo. And really, that was about it. You had a TV, maybe an instrument, and a stereo. And if you weren't watching Three is Company or Taxi, then more than likely you were listening to your stereo. That's the way it was at our house. I hated piano lessons. The only time I played that piano was when my parents made me. So I think it'd be fair to say that 80% of the time, my sisters and I were listening to the stereo. We constantly took turns as to who was going to get to play a record. My parents were in their mid-20s, not making a lot of money. I would consider my dad's income to be lower blue collar. So we had one of those all-in-one, I believe it was a Zenith, might have been a Quasar, FM tuner, 8-track record player, and 2 speakers. I loved it. It didn't matter. I didn't know what really good sound was anyway. All I know is hot-blooded, sounded amazing, even really loud. And while I would definitely consider this a budget system, I don't think it was very uncommon given the amount of these 1970s receivers we see all the time, maybe picking up an SX850, a set of large Advents, and a Pioneer PL117. And I think most people around this time probably expected that equipment to last 10 to 15 years. And a system like that in the mid 70s, you're looking at about $1,400 to $1,500. And then moving into the 80s, if you were looking at how far you could stretch your entertainment dollar when buying all the equipment you need as a new homeowner, it's not that much different, but we do have to add a couple pieces because at this point, now you've got gaming consoles. And if you were a kid in the early 80s and you didn't have an Atari 2600, you were hating life. The amount of time we spent playing Asteroids and then later with the Intellivision playing Pitfall, unreal. Especially in the winter. In the summer, you couldn't get us off our bikes, but once that snow started flying, the video game console just revolutionized childhood. And then in the 80s, you also got cable TV. So we went from 3 channels to 50 or 60, whatever it was. We got boomboxes so we could hang out in our rooms, take our music with us on the bus. VCRs were a game changer. And then we also had to have a Walkman. And then in the 90s, as TVs and stereos got cheaper, it wasn't uncommon to see a TV in almost every single room of the house. And don't forget the cable boxes, the VCRs, and the DVD players for all those other TVs as well. And I think you all know now where I'm going with this at this point. But if you look at what happened in the 2000s, I mean, this really is the biggest nail in the stereo hi-fi coffin. Because now all of a sudden you've got Bluetooth, multi-room sound, cheap LED TVs, so they're everywhere. Most likely you've got a soundbar hooked up to each one of them. You've got earbuds, iPods, you've got cable TV, sports packages, and you've got the introduction of the streaming services like Netflix. You got computers, tablets, and we've got the granddaddy of them all, the smartphone. So now for a brand new family starting up in the 2000s, you're rolling into Best Buy with your credit card. You're going to get everything you need to entertain the whole family under one roof. You don't just have one TV, one stereo, and maybe a piano. You've got a list. And guess where that stereo buying power went? It's gone. And for that reason, I do think that statement is really true. Every time I go to Best Buy, all they've got is a bunch of garbage. Well, look at the price point they're hitting. They're able to make a 2-channel stereo and sell for $200, which in the mid 70s would cost
$35.
That's cheap. I mean, that's beyond cheap. The fact that these things even last 6 or 7 years is impressive. If you were looking to put that Pioneer system together, you'd be looking at $8,000. I could put together an incredible stereo system for $8,000 in 2025. Easy. And when I look at it that way, it all makes sense. It really does. There are so many devices in our house competing for our entertainment, and our budget is stretched so thin across all of those. But to think they don't make equipment today that stands up to the equipment from the 70s is just wrong. And it's actually the same price. It's built just as well. To think they haven't made really big advancements in amplification, the source, the speakers, is just a little bit naive. It really is. I'm not claiming it's going to have the repairability that the equipment from the 70s does. It might not even have the longevity that the equipment from the 70s did. But brands like Yamaha, Advanced Paris, Macintosh, Marantz, Luxman, Cambridge Audio, and that list goes on of companies that are making really, really good equipment at the same price point as it was in the mid 70s. I think we're all just so used to seeing advertisements for Bluetooth speakers and Sonos, soundbars, earbuds. Those advertisements have a way bigger audience. The amount of integrated amplifiers and receivers that are being sold today are just minuscule compared to the 70s. Back in the day when you had one stereo and one TV. And I'm definitely guilty of this too. I get a new cell phone every 2 years. According to the internet, the average is 3. And the average price for a cell phone is $300 to $400. So why some people kind of scoff at the price of a new amplifier, an integrated amplifier at $1,000, we spend that in 10 years on cell phones, no problem. And I do think some of those customers that come in, they're referring to the look of them. Why don't they make a throwback receiver that looks like the vintage ones? And I do think the truth of that is AM/FM is just not a high priority on anybody's list at this point. And I also think that most of the people that do want that look, if a company were to make a retro or vintage throwback receiver, most likely be out of most people's price ranges. But this definitely changed my mind on how I think about the evolution of stereo and how we got here in 2025, where most of the people shopping at Best Buy, Walmart, and Amazon think that the modern stereos are just garbage and how $1,000 receiver is overpriced. Now, the bigger question is, as a society, are we better off, or were we better off without all this crap, all these distractions? Because looking back, just having that TV and that one stereo system for 5 people, maybe it was my childhood, or maybe it was one of the best times to be alive. I'm not sure which. And if you enjoyed this video, definitely hit the subscribe, like the video, leave a comment. And if you're wanting to watch another video, you should definitely watch that one. It's fun. Thanks.